It was November 6, 2025, aboard the Carnival Horizon cruise ship, slicing through the Caribbean seas, a dream family vacation turned nightmare. 18-year-old Anna Kepner vanishes after dinner, only to be found the next morning. She was hidden under a bed, no longer living, wrapped in a blanket and covered with life jackets, right where her brothers had slept feet away. And when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. The shocking suspect is her 16-year-old stepbrother, the only one seen entering and exiting the room. What motive could drive such a horror? Why no arrests after nearly 3 weeks? And could this happen in our own families, as we struggle more than ever to truly understand our kids? This is the case of Anna Kepner. What really happened? The incident unfolded on the Carnival Horizon, a massive Vista-class cruise ship that can carry up to 960 passengers and typically runs Caribbean itineraries out of Port Miami. This particular voyage was a 7-day trip through the Caribbean, and the ship docks back in Miami every Saturday. Which is kind of eerie when you think about it. People might be staying in that same cabin right now, without knowing what happened there. The group on board included Anna's grandparents, Barbara and Jeffrey Kepner, her biological father, Christopher Kepner, her stepmother, Chantel Hudson, her approximately 14-year-old biological brother, and her 16-year-old stepbrother. Referred to in documents as TH, they had arranged 3 separate cabins for the trip, one for the grandparents, one for the parents and the younger girls, and one for the 3 teenagers, Anna, her biological brother, and the stepbrother. The cabin in question was set up for families, with 1 queen-size bed and 2 bunk beds, making it a tight space overall. From what we've pieced together, the evening started normally enough, but things took a turn when Anna felt unwell during dinner and headed back to her cabin. Later, surveillance cameras captured her returning to the room, but crucially, there's no footage of her ever leaving it again. The next morning, around 11:17 a.m. on November 7, 2025, the ship's PA system broadcast a medical alert to that specific stateroom. It was the room steward, coming in to clean as part of the routine turnover before the ship docked, who made the grim discovery. The Anna were found concealed under the bed, no longer living, with the mattress having to be pulled back to reveal them, wrapped in a blanket and covered with life jackets. Moving into the strange details that are hard to explain, this case is full of elements that just don't add up easily, making it a real puzzle for investigators and us true crime analysts alike. The victim were hidden so meticulously under the bed in such a small cabin. We're talking about a space designed for efficiency on a cruise ship. Reports indicate that the mattress had to be lifted to even spot the remains, which suggests deliberate effort to stash them out of sight, wrapped in that blanket and piled under life jackets that are standard in every room. How does something like that happen in a confined area without anyone noticing unusual activity or sounds? The cabin's layout, with the queen bed and bunks, means everything is in close proximity, yet no immediate red flags were raised during the night. Then there's the timing. The ship was nearing the end of its voyage, and the discovery came just as preparations for disembarkation were underway. The FBI boarded the vessel as soon as it docked in Miami on November 8, 2025, bringing in their evidence response teams, those specialized units you see at major crime scenes, with trucks shuttling back and forth. They informed the family that the cause was asphyxiation, specifically mechanical asphyxiation, as per the death certificate issued on November 24, 2025. ABC News reported signs consistent with a bar hold, that arm across the neck maneuver, along with 2 bruises on the side of her neck. There were no indications of sensitive assault, and no toxicology showed in her system. Interestingly, the remains were described as being in perfect condition when transported to the medical examiner's office in Miami-Dade. Her biological brother slept just feet away from where the remains were hidden, assuming she had gone to be with the adults, and didn't realize anything was wrong until the search began the next morning. The stepbrother claimed he doesn't remember what happened, which adds another layer of mystery. The biological brother also reported hearing yelling and chairs being thrown from inside the cabin the night before, with the door locked, but he was outside at that point. Surveillance footage shows Anna entering the room, but not exiting, and only the stepbrother is seen coming and going after that. Despite all this, the ship was cleared to load new passengers and sail out again just hours after the FBI processed the scene. which raises questions about how thoroughly they could secure everything on a vessel that's essentially a floating city. And remember, there are no actual police on board these ships, only security personnel employed by the cruise line, who aren't independent investigators and might prioritize protecting the company's interests. The camera system is extensive, covering every hallway and public area, yet no clips show Anna leaving the room, making it hard to fathom how this played out without more immediate intervention. Now, let's break down what everyone was doing around the incident occurred, piecing it together from statements and reports to get a clear timeline. Starting with Anna herself, she wasn't feeling well during dinner on November 6, 2025, something about her braces bothering her, so she excused herself and headed back to the cabin early. But she must have perked up, because she changed into nicer clothes and rejoined the group at the casino later that evening. She played about $20, didn't win, and then said her goodbyes with an, "I love you guys," before heading back to the cabin for what turned out to be the last time. Her approximately 14-year-old biological brother was in the room briefly after dinner. He went in to change clothes, and then left the cabin to take pictures of the ship, capturing those last night on the cruise moments that kids often do. When he returned, he noticed Anna wasn't in her bed, so he assumed she'd gone out with the adults and went to sleep without a second thought, right there in the same tight space. The 16-year-old stepbrother, meanwhile, was the one left alone in the cabin with Anna, after the biological brother stepped out for those photos. He's the last person seen leaving the room that night, and according to accounts, there was yelling and the sound of chairs being thrown while he was inside with her. The biological brother heard this commotion from outside, with the door locked. As for the adults, Barbara and Jeffrey Kepner, Christopher Kepner, and Chantel Hudson, they were still out after Anna left the casino, not seeing her again that night. The next morning, they heard the ship's PA system announce a medical alert specifically to Anna's stateroom, which Barbara recognized immediately by the room number. That's when panic set in, and they began searching the ship. The ship's staff, particularly the room steward, entered to clean as part of a standard procedure, and was the first to discover the remains under the bed after pulling back the mattress. We can imagine the shock in that moment, the steward expecting a routine tidy-up and instead uncovering this hidden scene. From there, the alert escalated, leading to the FBI's involvement once the ship docked. But during the night itself, no one from the crew or security intervened based on any reports of disturbance, which ties back to the lack of real law enforcement on board. Finally, analyzing the characteristics of the suspect based on the facts we've collected. The cabin was occupied by only 3 people that night: Anna, her biological brother, and the stepbrother, which narrows the field right away. Surveillance cameras provide key evidence. They show Anna entering the room, but there's no record of her leaving, and no one else besides the stepbrother is captured coming or going during the critical window. The biological brother left the cabin to photos, leaving the stepbrother alone with Anna at that point. He returned later and heard nothing more, assuming she was elsewhere, but the earlier sounds of yelling and furniture being thrown, specifically chairs, came from inside while the door was locked and the stepbrother was present. The way the remains were concealed under the bed, wrapped and covered, points to intentional hiding, which eliminates a simple accident without follow-up actions. The stepbrother's statement that he doesn't remember what happened raises flags, as does his immediate emotional state during the FBI interview. He was described as an emotional mess, unable to speak coherently, and in disbelief. Following the ship's return to port, he was hospitalized for psychiatric observation and later released to stay with relatives, which suggests some level of distress or need for evaluation post-incident. Characteristics based on the evidence include being the last person with Anna in the room, with the biological brother absent during the reported disturbance. Cameras confirm he's the only one moving in and out besides her initial entry. There are prior reports of interactions with Anna that weren't typical, but sticking to the core facts, his presence and the exclusion of others stand out. In the interview, his inability to recall or articulate events, combined with the physical evidence of concealment, points to involvement. After the discapitalization for mental health reasons adds to the profile without speculating on motives. Eliminating outsiders. No strangers entered per video, and ruling out the biological brother due to his absence during the key moments, we're left with the one person who fits all the data points. As per that principle, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. The 16-year-old stepbrother emerges as the suspect. At this point we have to circle back to the lingering question, if the 16-year-old stepbrother truly is the suspect, what could have driven him to harm his own stepsister on that ship? Such a really unsafe situation. And is it too soon to lock in on this conclusion? Absolutely. Nearly 3 weeks have passed since November 6, 2025, with no arrests yet. The family's crack. To understand the motive behind this incident, we need to look back at the Kepner family background and their issues, especially the strange relationship between Anna and her stepbrother, which is believed to be the main factor in this case. The Kepner household is a large blended family with 8 siblings in total, including 18-year-old Anna Kepner, her approximately 14-year-old biological brother, her 16-year-old stepbrother known in documents as TH, and several younger children from various marriages. Anna's father, Christopher Purcell Kepner, has been married 3 times, first to Heather Wright, who is Anna's biological mother, then to Tabitha L. Kepner, with whom he had 2 children that are Anna's half-siblings, and most recently to Chantel Hudson, the mother of the 16-year-old stepper and other younger kids. Chantel Hudson married Christopher in 2024 and moved to Titusville, Florida, a town about 40 miles from Miami, with her 2 youngest children from her previous marriage to Thomas Hudson. This newly blended family hasn't much time to build strong ties, but sources describe it as close-knit, with no distinctions made between step relations. Everyone is treated as part of one unit. Christopher's infidelity with Tabitha while married to Heather led to their divorce 13 years ago, setting the stage for the family's complex dynamics. The family also includes Anna's paternal grandparents, Barbara and Jeffrey Kepner, who joined the cruise and stayed in their own separate cabin. Meanwhile, Heather Wright, Anna's biological mother, lives in Oklahoma and didn't participate in the cruise at all. From what we've pulled from court documents and interviews, this setup involves multiple relocations and custody arrangements, with the family residing in Titusville, where Anna attended Temple Christian School as a senior cheerleader with straight A's. Shifting to the strange relationships within this family, we've noted several red flags that stand out in the records. For instance, Christopher Kepner has faced accusations of mistreating his children and former wives physically and mentally, as detailed in the 2023 divorce filing with Tabitha L. Kepner. Tabitha specifically claimed Christopher had a history of physical and mental mistreatment toward the children and herself, which paints a picture of a household where tensions ran high. This isn't isolated. There's also a 2008 injunction related to sexual violence involving Christopher Kepner, though details remain limited in public sources. His relationship with Heather Wright, Anna's biological mother, is marked by alienation. She's been distant, last seeing Anna a few years ago, and Christopher reportedly made it difficult for her to maintain contact. Heather learned about Anna's death through a Google search rather than direct notification from the family, which highlights the strained ties. At Anna's memorial, Heather had to disguise herself with a wig and high heels due to threats of arrest over child support issues if she entered Florida, adding to the bizarre family fractures. On the stepmother's side, Chantel Hudson has been accused of manipulating and alienating her children from their biological father, Thomas Hudson, as mentioned on a 2024 minor lawsuit involving firearms, described as a very sad and heartbreaking ordeal. Thomas has claimed Chantel alienated their 2 younger children from him following violent argument related to an older child. In their ongoing divorce, Chantel filed to postpone hearings, requesting a gag order and sealed records to protect minors in what she called an extremely sensitive and severe circumstance. Thomas filed similarly, referring to TH as the suspect in the death of the stepchild, and Chantel stated she couldn't testify because it might prejudice her adolescent child in the pending criminal investigation. The obituary for Anna was edited after her death, initially listing Tabitha as the mother before changing to Heather, and removing the 16-year-old stepbrother's name along with the Donahue family references, which suggests ongoing family disputes even in mourning. Anna's step-grandfather, Christopher Donahue, expressed confusion about the sleeping arrangements on the cruise, where teenagers of different genders shared a cabin. There are also allegations that teenagers were allowed to drink alcohol in international waters, despite being under 21, though Chantal's lawyer denied this. These elements create a web of unusual dynamics, where past mistreatment and custody battles seem to linger unresolved. Now, considering whether this kind of living environment is safe for the children involved, the details we've collected point to significant risks. Blended families with a history of mistreatment aren't inherently safe, as they can increase the odds of violent outcomes for kids, particularly when unrelated males are in the home. Studies show higher rates of harm in such setups due to less biological investment in caregiving. Children exposed to mistreatment or neglect face doubled arrest rates as they grow up, according to research on long-term effects, turning potential victims into perpetrators in a cycle. Boys, in particular, tend to imitate their fathers in mistreating households through social learning theory, where they observe and emulate confrontational patterns, leading to intergenerational transmission of violence. This isn't just theory, it's backed by data showing boys model aggressive behaviors from paternal figures, normalizing mistreatment as a conflict resolution tool. Compared to typical cases, not all mistreated children become mistreating parents or criminals, most don't, but the risk is markedly higher, with odds ratios around 2 if a father has a criminal history, or if parents have mental health issues, amplifying vulnerability in unstable homes. The mimicry deception theory applies here too, explaining how kids pick up deceptive or violent behaviors through repeated exposure, fooling themselves into thinking it's normal. Pathways from family violence to adolescent violence often involve emulating interparental conflicts and direct physical mistreatment, creating a pipeline for troubled teens. While intergenerational transmission is widely accepted in child mistreatment fields, it's not absolute. Resilience factors like external support can break the chain, but in cases like this, with multiple divorces and allegations, the environment likely fosters insecurity rather than protection. We've seen similar patterns in other true crime stories, like cases where stepfamily tensions escalate without intervention, leading to tragedies that could have been mitigated with earlier counseling or separation. Finally, the most shocking part of turning to the information on the stepbrothers' strange behaviors and confirmations from those involved, there are clear early signs that weren't addressed promptly. The 16-year-old stepbrother exhibited obsessive tendencies toward Anna, relentlessly pursuing her despite the recent blending of their families. He would enter Anna's room at 3 a.m. and climb on top of her while she was lying down, an incident witnessed via FaceTime by her ex-boyfriend, 15-year-old Joshua too. He carried a large knife around, making Anna feel uncomfortable and scared in his presence. Sources describe a crazy infatuation, where he always wanted to date Anna, crossing sibling boundaries. He had demons in his past and was trying to deal with those, as noted by the grandparents. During his FBI interview, he was an emotional mess, couldn't speak, and couldn't believe what had happened. According to grandmother Barbara Kepner, he claimed not to remember what occurred, a statement Barbara heard in his own words, and she added, "They were just like brother and sister," but qualified that she believes to him that is his truth regarding the memory lapse. Joshua too confirmed reporting the encounter to Anna's parents, noting Anna complained about feeling uncomfortable around the stepbrother. Joshua's father, Stephen Weston, affirmed the stepbrother was obsessed with a crazy infatuation and desire to date Anna. These were early signs Anna's reports of discomfort and fear, yet the family still arranged for them to share a cabin on the cruise without intervention. Following the ship's docking, he was hospitalized for psychiatric care, released to a family member, and has a psychiatrist appointment scheduled for early next month. As per his mother and court records, this lack of timely action on the red flags, obsession, inappropriate physical contact, and weapon-carrying mirrors missed opportunities in many cases where escalation could have been prevented with counseling or boundaries. Psychological explanations for teenage obsession and infatuation in step-siblings often stem from exposure to family violence, where learned aggressive behaviors emerge through social cognitive theory. As teens internalize patterns from unstable homes, sibling violence is linked to negative mental and physical health outcomes, frequently originating from observed family aggression that normalizes possessiveness or control. Low self-esteem can mediate associations between sibling violence and peer bullying, potentially escalating obsessive tendencies into harmful actions. Hostility and aggression between siblings predict antisocial behavior and substance use, independent of direct parental influence. The intergenerational transmission of violence means children exposed to mistreatment are at higher risk of perpetrating similar acts in relationships, creating a cycle of relational harm. In typical cases, not all exposed teens become violent, most do not. But the risk is elevated with odds ratios around 2:10 if parents have criminal or mental issues, amplifying vulnerability in blended families. Compared to common cases like the Menendez brothers, where parental mistreatment fueled retaliation, the obsession in step-siblings often escalates without intervention, mirroring unresolved tensions leading to homicide. Warning signs of youth violence, such as loss of temper or physical fighting, can signal escalation from obsession to more severe crimes. Psychological analysis indicates obsessive infatuation in adolescence may signal disorders increasing homicide risk. Studies of 50 serial killers reveal prevalent childhood mistreatment in those with lust motives, positioning obsession as an early sign of greater crimes. Youth with passive-aggressive traits from mistreated homes are 4 times more likely to commit crimes, including violent acts, underscoring how these behaviors could foreshadow larger threats if ignored. Over 3 weeks, no charge. Nearly 3 weeks have passed since Anna Kepner's tragic death on November 6, 2025, aboard the Carnival Horizon, yet no arrests have been made, leaving many to wonder about the complexities holding back law enforcement in this federal case. The stepbrother was first identified as the primary suspect in the case when details emerged from court documents related to a divorce proceeding. Specifically, T.H., the 16-year-old stepbrother, came into focus through filings in the divorce case between his mother, Chantel Hudson, and her ex-husband Thomas Hudson, submitted on November 18, 2025, in Brevard County, Florida. In her motion, Chantel requested a postponement of the custody hearing, citing an extremely sensitive and severe circumstance that involved an ongoing FBI investigation into the sudden death of Anna, described as the daughter of her paramour, Christopher Kepner. She noted that the entire family, including the minor children, had been on the cruise ship together, and she had been advised by FBI investigators and her attorneys that a criminal case might be initiated against one of the minor children in the action. This vague but pointed reference hinted at potential charges looming over one of her sons. Thomas Hudson filed a similar motion, more directly labeling T.H. as the suspect in the death of the stepchild, escalating the public scrutiny on the teenager. These court documents, which were not sealed at the time, leaked to the media around November 20, 2025, just days before the Miami-Dade medical examiner's death certificate officially ruled the manner of death as homicide on November 24, 2025. The FBI itself has not directly confirmed T.H. as a suspect, maintaining their characteristic tight-lipped approach to ongoing investigations, but sources close to the probe, described as law enforcement insiders, have affirmed that T.H. is the main focus, largely based on surveillance video from the ship showing only him entering and exiting the cabin during the critical time frame. In a poignant interview with ABC News on November 24, 2025, Anna's grandparents, Barbara and Jeffrey Kepner, shared that the FBI had informed the family that T.H. was the only person seen coming and going from the room, and they recounted hearing him say in his own words during questioning that he couldn't remember what happened. Posts on X from November 24 and 25, 2025 amplified this revelation, with outlets like TMZ and USA Today reporting that the stepbrother had been named a suspect via the court docs, while the grandparents defended him in statements, insisting he was innocent until proven guilty and that they weren't scared of him. One particular post on X even referenced T.H. as a minor under FBI investigation, but emphasized that no charges had been filed yet, underscoring the slow pace of the process. Analyzing why there are accusing pieces of evidence, but still no one has been arrested reveals a multifaceted web of legal, procedural, and evidentiary hurdles that are stalling progress in this high-profile case. At its core, the incident is classified as a federal crime because it occurred in international waters on a cruise ship, placing the FBI firmly in the lead for the investigation while coordinating with Carnival's security team. This federal jurisdiction means the case can't simply be handed off to a state juvenile system for quicker handling, complicating matters from the start. T.H., being a juvenile under 18 years old, falls under the protections and complexities of the Juvenile Delinquency Act, where federal prosecutions of minors are rare and intricate. Options include a delinquency proceeding or If the crime is deemed severe enough and the individual is over 15, which TH is at 16, a potential transfer to adult court, but federal authorities often avoid juvenile cases altogether, requiring extensive time for evaluation and decision-making. Adding to the delay is the wait for official autopsy and toxicology results, projected for release around November 27, 2025, which could take weeks or even months to fully confirm elements like DNA evidence, any defensive wounds on the remains, or a pattern of violence drawn from prior incidents, such as reported obsession or knife-carrying behaviors. The FBI's notoriously secretive nature means the investigation is ongoing, involving thorough reviews of video footage, phone records, and interviews with crew members and passengers. But there's no rush because TH isn't considered a flight risk. He was hospitalized for psychiatric care immediately after the ship docked and has since been released to stay with a third party while undergoing counseling. While the accusing evidence is compelling, surveillance showing only him moving in and out of the cabin, reports of yelling and chairs being thrown during a locked-door altercation, obsession noted by Anna's ex-boyfriend, and his own claim of not remembering anything, it's apparently not yet sufficient for charges, as it requires full corroboration with domestic history and DNA from the staged concealment scene under the bed. Protecting the minor's rights plays a role too, with a pending gag order and request to seal records from Chantel aimed at avoiding prejudice. And while Florida doesn't recognize a parent-child privilege, compelling testimony if needed adds another layer of legal wrangling. The forensic challenges on the ship compound this, lacking real police presence and relying only on company security, who may prioritize protecting the crew's line over impartiality. The crime scene was potentially contaminated before the FBI could fully board and process it, necessitating extra time to sift through and validate evidence. As of the latest updates on November 25, 2025, there are still no charges, with the investigation plodding along and the grandparents noting that TH is devastated, maintaining his innocence until proven otherwise, all while the FBI remains silent on details. This isn't the first time law enforcement has grappled with a suspect in circumstances like these, as similar cases from the past highlight patterns of juvenile violence against siblings, memory lapses, and psychiatric defenses that echo TH's situation. Take the case of Benjamin Elliott in Texas back in 2018, which bears the strongest resemblances in terms of a teenager allegedly caused his sister's death amid claims of amnesia and mental health issues. Benjamin, then 17 years old, was accused of stabbing his twin sister, Megan Elliott, also 17, to death with a knife in July 2018, attacking her in her bedroom in the middle of the night while their parents were asleep downstairs. The method involved multiple stabbings, over 30 wounds in total, delivering a brutal, close-range violence that parallels the strangulation in Anna's case, where asphyxiation via bar holds left neck bruises. Benjamin's defense centered on a claim of sleepwalking, a form of parasomnia, insisting he had no memory of the act, describing himself as an emotional mess afterward with a history of psychiatric issues including depression, anxiety, and possible dissociative episodes that made him seem detached or troubled. The family background wasn't explicitly blended like the Kepners, but it was dysfunctional, marked by parental divorce and allegations of mistreatment involving Benjamin, creating a stressful home environment that fueled tensions. During the trial, which concluded with a 15-year in jail sentence in 2021, Benjamin's team presented expert testimony on sleepwalking as a mitigating factor, and the case remains in appeals, drawing out the legal process much like the delays in Anna's investigation. Points of similarity are striking. Both involve juveniles, with no memory claims, emotional or psychiatric breakdowns, and underlying family stress. Differences include no clear obsession in Benjamin's case, and the method of knife versus arm hold, but the psychiatric hospitalization post-incident for TH mirrors Benjamin's evaluations. Another case with notable parallels is that of Austin in Washington state from 2014. Showcasing juvenile violence against an older sister amid sibling rivalry and emotional distress. Ethan, just 12 years old at the time, caused his sister's death, Caitlin Austin. They found a shotgun on June 9, 2014, at their home in Hanson Park. They suggested an act that stemmed from what seemed like a minor argument, but escalated fatally. The method was a shotgun blast to the head, which Ethan claimed was accidental or born out of sudden rage from a dispute over something trivial like a TV remote, highlighting how everyday sibling conflicts can turn seriously. Ethan was known as a Boy Scout, quiet yet troubled, in a family that was blended but rife with underlying tensions that amplified rivalry between the siblings. Following the incident, Ethan exhibited profound emotional distress, struggling to recall details of the event, and underwent extensive psychiatric evaluation. As part of the legal process, he was charged with juvenile murder, reflecting the complexities of prosecuting minors. The outcome saw him sentenced to juvenile detention until age 21, coupled with mandatory therapy, leaving the family utterly shattered and grappling with the loss. These precedents illustrate cases involving young suspects like Th. often drag on due to the delicate balance of evidence gathering, psychiatric assessments, and federal or state juvenile laws, preventing hasty arrest even when accusations mount. In Benjamin's story, the family's dysfunction played out over years, with his parents' divorce creating an unstable home where mistreatment claims surfaced, much like the Kepner blended setup with its own divorce histories and alienation issues. The sleepwalking defense prolonged proceedings, requiring multiple experts to testify on whether his amnesia was genuine or a cover, similar to how Th. is no memory claim an emotional brain might be scrutinized for dissociative disorders. Ethan's case, meanwhile, stemmed from a seemingly banal sibling spat that exploded, underscoring how quiet kids can harbor rage, paralleling Th. described demons, and quiet demeanor masking potential obsession. Both prior cases involved thorough investigations to rule out accidents or mental health mitigators before charges stuck. And, in Ethan's, the juvenile sentencing focused on rehabilitation over adult punishment, a path that could await Th. if prosecuted. Overall, these stories remind us that law enforcement treads carefully with minors, ensuring every piece, from video corroboration to psych evils, aligns before moving forward, explaining the current limbo, nearly 3 weeks in. The broken investigation. The investigation into Anna Kepner's death on the Carnival Horizon has been marked by several unusual developments that have raised eyebrows among legal experts alike. One of the most striking aspects is how the suspect, the 16-year-old stepbrother, was revealed not through an official FBI press release or the medical examiner's findings, but via unrelated custody documents filed on November 18, 2025. These papers came from stepmother Chantel Hudson's divorce proceedings with her ex-husband Thomas Hudson in Brevard County, Florida, where she described an extremely sensitive and severe circumstance involving an FBI probe into Anna's sudden death and the potential criminal prosecution of one of her minor children. Thomas Hudson's filing echoed this, bluntly calling his son the suspect in the death of the stepchild, which sparked immediate media coverage from outlets like ABC News and Fox News, even though the FBI hadn't publicly named anyone. This leak shifted the narrative early on, raising questions about why family court records became the conduit for such critical information instead of law enforcement channels. Another odd turn came right after the ship docked in Port Miami on November 8, 2025. The Carnival Horizon was cleared to load new passengers and set sail again that same day, just hours after the FBI's evidence response teams had processed the scene. We see this as a hint that investigators quickly ruled out a random killer, leaning toward a domestic issue within the family, but it still feels abrupt for a case involving remains found hidden under a bed. The stepbrother was hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation immediately after the ship returned on November 8, then released to an undisclosed third-party location without any arrest, which adds to the peculiar pacing of the probe. In the custody hearing on November 18, 2025, the stepmother invoked the Fifth Amendment, claiming her testimony could prejudice her or her child in the criminal matter. Yet Florida law doesn't recognize a parent-child privilege, meaning authorities could potentially compel her under threat of contempt. Why hasn't that happened yet? The FBI has remained tight-lipped throughout, offering no operational updates except in rare statements, like the one on November 21, 2025, directing all inquiries to their Miami Public Affairs Office. Around November 20, 2025, Chantel Hudson filed additional court documents seeking a gag order to prevent FBI information from being released publicly and to seal records, citing the sensitive nature of the case. Moving into the shortcomings we've identified, a major gap is the absence of real police on the ship. Instead, only cruise line security handles initial responses. And they're not independent, they have incentives to protect the company. Like downplaying crimes, the crime scene could have been contaminated because the room to clean before the full FBI team arrived on November 8, 2025, potentially disturbing evidence in that tight cabin space. The ship's quick release after docking that day might have missed deeper forensics on a vessel teeming with thousands of passengers, as investigators didn't hold it longer for exhaustive searches. There's been a delay in the official cause of death preliminary findings leaked through media like ABC News before the death certificate was issued on November 24, 2025, creating unnecessary speculation in the public eye. Toxicology and autopsy reports are still pending, expected around November 27, 2025, which is standard but feels sluggish for a high-profile juvenile case where every detail matters. There's no rush to arrest despite the suspect being known early from video footage, due to juvenile complexities and no flight risk, but leaving him free for nearly 3 weeks raises concerns about ongoing safety. The custody filings publicized the suspect before the FBI could confirm, risking the investigation's integrity and potentially biasing any future jury pool with premature media exposure. We also note a lack of intervention on prior reports of the stepbrother's behaviors, such as his obsession and carrying a knife. Even though the parents were informed by the ex-boyfriend before the cruise, why wasn't this flagged in the initial family interviews? There was minimal onboard response to the reported yelling and chairs being thrown the night before on November 6, 2025. No security check occurred despite the commotion, which could have prevented escalation. The FBI's refusal to comment on details has led to media leaks and speculation from sources like ABC, Fox, and the New York Post, filling the information vacuum with unverified claims. Potential alcohol access for minors on the ship, though denied, hasn't been addressed as a factor in the initial probe, overlooking possible supervision issues. There's no geotagged or real-time tracking for all movements on the ship, relying solely on cameras that might miss private areas like cabins. The Pentagon isn't involved, but there's no mention of enhanced maritime security protocols post-incident, which seems like an oversight for future prevention. As for the errors by the investigating forces, the FBI allowed the ship to depart after initial processing on November 8, 2025, potentially missing witness interviews or additional evidence collection from passengers who might have heard or seen something unusual. They didn't hold all passengers on the ship to question them, even though a random killing was a possible theory at first. But let everyone off based on early intel from cameras. Could this have overlooked key testimonies? Their reliance on cruise security for the initial response is problematic, as those personnel might downplay or mishandle the scene. They have no firearms, only handcuffs and tasers, and while trained, they're not independent investigators. There was a delay in public confirmation of homicide until the death certificate on November 24, 2025. Despite preliminary asphyxiation details being shared with the family earlier, which allowed leaks to dominate the narrative. The FBI didn't prevent leaks from the custody docs, leading to public speculation and possible compromise of the investigation through tainted perceptions. They haven't addressed prior reports of the stepbrother's creepy behaviors in initial family interviews. Even though those are relevant to motive, why ignore such leads? There's minimal coordination with local law enforcement, like Titusville PD, focusing solely on federal aspects, but potentially missing local context about the family's history of disputes. The agency hasn't publicly disclosed video footage or phone records to clarify the timeline, maintaining secrecy despite high public interest, which fuels distrust. Hospitalizing the stepbrother without a custody hold, even as a suspect, might have missed a timely psych evaluation that could yield a confession or more details. They haven't compelled testimony from the stepmother early on, despite her invoking the Fifth Amendment, when Florida law allows it under threat of contempt. Why the hesitation? There's a potential forensic error in treating the ship as a floating city with thousands of cameras, but no mention of full data recovery if any areas were contaminated by the quick turnover. Finally, they haven't investigated alcohol allegations thoroughly from the start, even though raised in the custody hearing as a supervision issue, which could be a missed angle on the family's dynamics during the cruise. Speaking further about the police's tendency to conceal information, an important detail that proves this is that the stepbrother's immediate hospitalization for psychiatric reasons right after the Carnival Horizon docked on November 8, 2025. According to details from the divorce court proceedings, his mother, Chantel Hudson, stated that he was taken to a psychiatric hospital as soon as the ship arrived in Port Miami. He was later discharged and has continued with counseling and psychiatric care. which raises questions about the timing and its impact on the probe. During his FBI interview shortly after, as described by grandmother Barbara Kepner, who sat in on part of it, he was an emotional mess, he couldn't speak, couldn't believe what had happened, and claimed, "I don't remember what happened." This paints a picture of someone in acute crisis. But it also conveniently delayed any in-depth questioning at a critical moment. From the media experts and legal commentators we've reviewed in videos and news segments, this hospitalization stands out as unusual in murder investigations. They question why a suspect wasn't detained outright, but instead placed in a hospital setting, calling it a big unusual deviation from standard procedures where potential perpetrators are often held for evaluation under custody. This move may reflect his genuinely unstable mental state post-incident, based on Barbara's account of him as an emotional mess, but it effectively halted immediate interrogation. News reports note that the FBI requires parents or lawyers present for minor interviews, and in a mental health crisis, getting an effective statement becomes impossible, slowing the entire process. Investigators can't detain or initiate prosecution while someone's in a psychiatric hospital, which buys time but leaves gaps in the timeline. This hospitalization also helps keep secret information about the suspect, as many analyses point out. With him being a juvenile, laws already protect his identity: no name, no images, no public discussion of the probe details. The immediate hospital stay makes him disappear from public view. And all subsequent info has come from divorce docs rather than the FBI texts emphasize. This is a very unusual situation. Without the custody filings we would know almost nothing, implying the hospitalization, combined with juvenile protections, reduces info leakage to a minimum. It's a strong suggestion that this step accidentally or intentionally seals the case, shielding it from scrutiny. Furthermore, the hospitalization makes it easier for the FBI to avoid public interrogation or arrest. From the texts, being brought to the hospital right after docking means the FBI couldn't detain him, conduct deep questioning, or announce him as a suspect without complications. Experts describe this as unusual, and say it has slowed down the investigation. By not arresting, it might encourage better family cooperation with police, but it keeps things more secret than typical cases. The hospitalization coincides perfectly with juvenile protections, which are extremely beneficial for keeping the identity secret. Investigators and lawyers in the sources stress that minors are fully shielded. And combining this with psychiatric care adds another layer. Texts suggest we would know next to nothing without the custody filings. It's like an additional shield that pushes the suspect out of the media spotlight, allowing the probe to proceed quietly. Finally, the FBI's refusal to announce the suspect is made easier by this hospitalization. Analyses note the FBI's complete silence, with no one outside the family knowing his condition: no video, no images, no whereabouts details. Media reports are vague. He is now living with a relative. This fits a juvenile in mental health care, helping keep the entire probe under wraps. The FBI and investigators are famous for special methods and techniques, and this could be one of them, especially in a complex case with intricate details and a young subject. The insiders speak out. Let's turn to the most heartbreaking part about what those directly involved have shared about Anna Kepner's death, drawing from their interviews and statements that paint a picture of grief mixed with unanswered questions. Starting with her paternal grandparents, Barbara and Jeffrey Kepner, they broke their silence in an ABC News interview on November 24, 2025, recounting the harrowing moment they learned of her fate. Barbara said, "I just screamed. I couldn't stop screaming." They described their last interactions with Anna during dinner on the cruise, where she felt unwell and headed back to her room, only to reappear later dressed up at the casino, playing without winning and bidding them farewell with, "Mima, I love you guys. I'll see you later." That was the final time they saw her alive. The FBI informed them the cause was asphyxiation, possibly from a bar hold. They avoided directly accusing the stepbrother, with Barbara noting, "I can't accuse him because I don't know what happened in that room," but added that the summation pointed to him doing something, since he was the only one seen coming and going. She overheard him say he does not remember what happened, describing him as an emotional mess who couldn't speak or believe the events. They portrayed Anna and her stepbrother as close, like brother and sister, and characterized him as a good student who played soccer, a very quiet young man who had demons in his past and was trying to deal with them. Their hope is for the family to heal, with justice being whatever the law dictates, left for the courts to decide. Anna's biological mother, Heather Wright, spoke out in a Bully-ish TV interview in Orlando and a TikTok video on November 11, 2025, plus statements to Inside Edition, expressing raw devastation. "My beautiful baby girl was found dead Friday. I just found out last night." She revealed that Anna's dad and stepmom didn't even contact her about the death, saying, "I'm going to give that to God, and let him sort it out along with whoever did this to my baby girl." Heather highlighted their fraught relationship with Christopher Kepner, noting she was unaware Anna was living with new step-siblings and hadn't seen her daughter in recent years. She's desperate for answers but has no contact from the father or FBI, reminiscing that Anna loved the water and might have been heading to the pool, where she enjoyed swimming. Ex-boyfriend's father, Stephen Weston, corroborated the threat from the stepbrother in statements to the Daily Mail and Inside Edition, asserting the stepbrother was infatuated and attracted to her like crazy, always wanting to date her. He claimed his son tried to warn Anna's parents, but they didn't want to believe it. Anna's father, Christopher Kepner, has voiced frustration in media comments. "We were there as a family. Everybody was questioned. Everybody came off that ship. I don't know who they're looking at or what their investigation is." He added, "The FBI hasn't shared anything with me yet. I would imagine they're going to be in contact with me about it, but I know as little as everybody else. And I have no idea what is going on right now. We are just trying to sit still and wait for answers." Stepmother Chantel Hudson, through court filings on November 18, 2025, stated she cannot testify because it would be prejudicial to her or her adolescent child in the pending criminal investigation, requesting postponement, a gag order, and sealed records for the extremely sensitive circumstance. The stepbrother's biological father, Thomas Hudson, in his filings, declared his son is the suspect in the death of the stepchild and alleged the mother failed to exercise appropriate supervision on the cruise, mentioning alcohol and teens having their own rooms. A family tribute reported in the New York Post on November 19, 2025, paid heartbreaking homage to Anna, who died on the cruise while a step-sibling is questioned by the FBI, describing her as sunshine, bubbly, funny, outgoing. A high school senior with straight A's who planned to join the U.S. Navy and was a cheerleader. Among the heartbreaking details that emerge from these accounts, Heather learned of her daughter's death via a Google search and text message days later, on November 11, 2025, without any direct notification from the family or authorities, amplifying her isolation and grief. She attended the memorial in disguise, fearing arrest over child support disputes, a stark illustration of the fractured bonds. The stepbrother's immediate emotional collapse, being an emotional mess who couldn't speak or believe what transpired, claiming no memory, adds a layer of tragedy, especially given mentions of his past demons. Anna had recently broken up with Joshua, who was supposed to join the cruise, leaving her in a vulnerable transition. The family was in flux with multiple divorces, ongoing custody disputes, and relocations, and Anna was just months from high school graduation and leaving home, heightening tensions. Initially, there was no confirmed cause of death or murder probe, leaving the family in limbo waiting for answers. The remains were in perfect condition at the medical examiner's office. The homicide ruling on November 24, 2025, specified mechanical asphyxiation by other persons, a chilling confirmation after weeks of uncertainty. The family's sorrow is compounded by the cruise industry's PR efforts to downplay threats, emphasizing no ongoing danger. Anna appeared unprotected, with her biological mother absent, and immediate parents possibly overlooking risks. There's a sense of potential cover-up. The alarm was raised by housekeeping rather than family members, despite commotion heard the night before with no action taken. The stepbrother, now hospitalized and with a relative, faces possible charges amid this turmoil. Looking at their attitudes toward the case, the grandparents Barbara and Jeffrey show shock and endless screaming at the news, with lingering questions like, why anyone would harm Anna. They sum up the stepbrother did something but won't accuse outright, leaving it to the courts while hoping for healing and justice per the law. Heather views it as a nightmare haunting her mind and heart, desperate for answers and entrusting God with whoever did it, her fraught history with Christopher evident in her disguise at the memorial and lack of contact. Stephen Weston believes the parents didn't want to acknowledge the warnings, highlighting the infatuation as a missed red flag. Christopher is frustrated and in the dark, knowing as little as everyone else, waiting passively for FBI contact amid disorientation from losing his daughter, while suspicion falls on his new family. Chantel is protective, avoiding testimony to shield her child and seeking gag orders to contain the sensitive details. Thomas is accusatory toward his ex-wife's supervision, confirming his son as suspect while pushing for custody changes. The family overall expresses grief. With a search for answers revealing unsettling truths, they're trying to sit still and wait, honoring Anna as their sunshine to focus on her positive legacy. Notably, much of their narrative tries to pin blame on the stepbrother. Yet if that's the case, it's worth examining why, instead of accusing now, they could have prevented his bad behaviors and thoughts earlier. This makes us wonder, this makes share fault in the tragedy for not intervening on the warnings. The cliffhanger status. As we're putting together this analysis for our True Crime channel on November 25, 2025, the Anna Kepner case remains shrouded in mystery, with the FBI's investigation still active and no arrests or formal charges announced against the 16-year-old stepbrother who's been identified as the primary suspect through court documents. Just yesterday, on November 24, 2025, the Miami-Dade medical examiner officially ruled her death a homicide caused by mechanical asphyxia, meaning suffocation by another person or persons, occurring on November 6, 2025, aboard the Carnival Horizon. Based on the death certificate shared with ABC News by her family. This confirms earlier leaks about a bar hold maneuver and bruises on her neck. The stepbrother, a minor who cannot be publicly named and is referred to as T.H. or Timothy Hudson in some reports, was pinpointed in filings from his mother's custody battle, where both parents acknowledged his status as a suspect in connection to Anna's death. He was hospitalized for psychiatric care right after the ship docked on November 8, 2025, and has since been discharged to live with an unnamed relative while continuing counseling, keeping him out of the spotlight amid the probe. The FBI continues to focus on him, bolstered by surveillance video showing him as the only one entering and exiting the cabin besides Anna, and the family has been told he's considered a suspect, though no official confirmation has come from authorities. Around November 20, 2025, stepmother Chantel Hudson filed for a gag order and to seal records to block public release of FBI details, citing the sensitive nature of the situation. There are hints of potential Department of Children and Families investigations in 3 Florida counties that may tie into the case, as mentioned in court filings, adding layers to the family scrutiny. No fresh developments were reported today, November 25, 2025, with the inquiry hampered by juvenile protections and its federal status due to occurring in international waters. Family court documents affirm the FBI is treating it as a murder investigation, while stepfather Thomas Hudson pushes for immediate custody of a younger sibling, claiming inadequate oversight on the trip. The grandparents had portrayed the stepbrother as a good student who played soccer, a quiet young man grappling with past demons, who was an emotional mess during his FBI interview, and claimed no recollection of events. Revelations from Anna's ex-boyfriend and his father about prior obsessive conduct, like climbing on her during a late-night FaceTime and carrying a knife, underscore tensions that went unheeded before the cruise. Carnival Cruise Line maintains full cooperation with the FBI, reiterating no ongoing threat to safety. To bring this case to a conclusion, several critical issues must be resolved, starting with the completion and release of the full autopsy and toxicology reports, anticipated around November 27, 2025, to solidify the absence of controlled substances or sensitive assault, while pinpointing the exact mechanism, like the bar hold bruises. DNA evidence from the crime scene, such as traces on the life jacket's blanket or other cabin items, needs thorough analysis to link directly to the suspect. Hours of CCTV footage, cell phone data, keycard swipes, and phone records require review to nail down the timeline and any motive. A comprehensive psychiatric evaluation of the stepbrother is essential to gauge his memory claim and mental competency for further questioning. Compelling testimony from stepmother Chantel Hudson could unlock more, as Florida law permits it under contempt threat, despite her Fifth Amendment plea. Prior reports of the stepbrother's behaviors, including obsession and knife carrying, demand investigation for establishing a pattern of violence or intent. The alleged alcohol access on the ship for minors should be probed as a possible supervision lapse. Resolving the gag order and seal requests in custody court will determine how much info flows publicly. A decision on transferring the case from juvenile to adult court under the Juvenile Delinquency Act is pivotal, given his age of 16 and the crime's gravity. All family members, passengers, and crew need re-interviewing for statements corroborating the commotion, like yelling and thrown chairs. The family's history of divorces and mistreatment allegations warrants examination for contextual motive. Finally, ensuring no forensic contamination from the ship's quick release is key to validating evidence integrity. Looking ahead, we predict the full autopsy and toxicology release by late November or early December 2025, which could confirm details and propel charges forward if they align with homicide indicators. An arrest or charges against the stepbrother seem possible once evidence like DNA or video solidifies, though his juvenile status will likely cause further delays. The custody court might rule on the gag order and seals by December 2025, either restricting or unleashing more public details. The stepbrother's psychiatrist appointment in early December 2025 could produce an evaluation impacting his competency or revealing motive insights. The FBI may push to compel testimony from family, uncovering new revelations that shift the narrative. If no gag order holds, media leaks could persist, ramping up public pressure and scrutiny. Biological mother Heather might pursue civil suits against the family for negligence, especially given her alienation claims. Should the case transfer to adult court, expect a faster trial process, otherwise, juvenile proceedings will remain sealed, limiting transparency. Industry pressure could lead to announced enhanced cruise security protocols by year's end. As holidays near, family statements may surge, emphasizing grief and healing to counter the ongoing probe's shadow. Why hasn't the FBI publicly confirmed the stepbrother as suspect despite court leaks that have already exposed him? What specific evidence, like DNA matches or video anomalies, is holding up an arrest after nearly 3 weeks? Could the family's prior knowledge of the stepbrother's behaviors open the door to negligence charges against the parents? How will juvenile protections influence the trial's transparency if it proceeds? What part did alleged alcohol access play in the events? And why has it gone unaddressed so far? Will compelling the stepmother's testimony reveal deeper family dynamics or conflicts? Are the potential DCF investigations connected, signaling broader mistreatment concerns within the household? Could the cruise security's initial response have preserved more evidence if not for the quick ship turnover? What psychiatric findings might validate or debunk the no memory claim, and how would that affect charges? Will the homicide's severity push for a transfer to adult court, altering the case's trajectory? Shifting to concerns about monitoring and safeguarding children, we see how oversight and protection in blended families often fall short due to intricate dynamics, heightening risks of violence and mistreatment that can leave kids vulnerable. Children witnessing family violence frequently develop fear, stress, and emotional or behavioral issues, such as sleep disturbances, an intensified startle response, constant worry, withdrawal, or even aggressive imitation of what they've seen. In setups with unrelated males, the danger of lethal violence rises, as child protection research highlights reduced biological investment in care leading to oversight gaps. Systems like Florida's DCF can launch inquiries, but often overlook subtle signs in private settings, where red flags go unnoticed until tragedy strikes. Monitoring lapses occur when prior discomfort signals, like reports of obsession or weapon carrying, don't prompt action. Protection weakens further with arrangements like opposite-gender teens sharing spaces without close watch, especially amid known unease. Socially, kids in minority groups or custody battles are prone to being overlooked, fostering neglect that compounds risks. Scientifically, those exposed to violence are likelier to face PTSD, anxiety, depression, substance use, or sleep disorders as enduring effects. The family's role as the main guardian is crucial, yet in blended households, it's often undermined by conflicts, divorces, and alienations that erode stability. Parents must vigilantly spot signs of distress or odd conduct in children, stepping in promptly with counseling or separation to mitigate harm. The father's part involves setting a safe tone, but accusations of physical and mental mistreatment toward kids and ex-spouses, coupled with a pattern of infidelity and hindering the biological mother's involvement, can destabilize the environment. The stepmother's position requires fostering unity, yet claims of manipulating or alienating children from their birth father, alongside alleged lapses in cruise oversight like alcohol and room sharing, highlight potential blind spots. Families ought to report concerns, but here, alerts from the ex-boyfriend about the stepbrother's fixation and knife were disregarded. Grandparents play a supportive part, observing closeness without halting risky setups or pushing for changes. The biological mother, distanced and unable to safeguard from afar, faced barriers like disguised memorial attendance due to support disputes. The stepfather, accusing his ex of alienation post-violent quarrel while labeling his son a suspect and seeking custody, reflects reactive rather than proactive protection. Scientifically, parents shape social learning, where kids mirror aggressive traits from household models. The consequences ripple far, with children facing heightened chances of becoming perpetrators or victims of violence, alongside emotional and behavioral struggles that persist into adulthood and fuel delinquency or crime. Statistics show odds ratios of 2:10 for criminality when parents carry criminal or mental burdens, with doubled arrest rates among the neglected underscoring the long shadow. Societally, this breeds a cycle of violence, overlapping victims and offenders in intergenerational mistreatment that spirals into mistreatment and outright aggression. In this instance, Anna's homicide by asphyxiation has left her family in profound grief, haunted by why questions and potential minor charges that fracture bonds further. Legally, the ongoing FBI scrutiny, custody fights, gag order negligence possibilities amplify fallout. Emotionally, the stepbrother's breakdown, hospitalization, and amnesia claim, paired with the family's shock, highlight deep disorientation. Communally, speculation and leaks spur demands for stronger safeguards in families and on cruises. Pathways research links family violence to teen aggression through mimicked conflicts and direct mistreatment. Though not every exposed individual turns violent, most resist, but unstable settings elevate the peril. Long-term scars include depression, PTSD, anxiety, substance issues, and sleep woes from embedded trauma. Did Anna Kepner contribute to the tragedy by ignoring warnings about the stepbrother's behaviors and allowing shared cabin arrangements? Could Chantel Hudson's alleged alienation and poor supervision on the cruise have prevented escalation if addressed earlier? Why didn't the parents intervene after being informed of Anna's discomfort and fear of the stepbrother's knife carrying? In light of Christopher's history of accused mistreatment, did this create an environment normalizing violence for the children? If the family was aware of the stepbrother's past demons, why no prior counseling or separation to protect Anna? Does the lack of direct notification to Heather Wright about Anna's death indicate parental fault in family communication? Could better parental oversight on alcohol access and teen interactions have averted the incident? In blended families like this, are parents culpable for not recognizing risks from unstable dynamics and prior reports? Why allow opposite-gender teens to share a room despite known infatuation, pointing to parental negligence? If warnings from the ex-boyfriend were dismissed, do parents share blame for not believing or acting on them? That's all for today's deep dive into the Anna Kepner case. Nearly 3 weeks on, no arrests, no charges, and far too many unanswered questions still hanging in the air. The FBI remains silent, the family is fractured, and the truth about what happened is still locked away. This story is far from over. We'll keep watching every filing, every leak, and every update. As soon as something breaks, we'll be back with part 2. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for your watching.